It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is your feel-good breakfast show, Expresso, on SABC3. Happy Friday to you. Now, for a system that was designed to keep races apart, apartheid relied heavily on black women who lived in and managed the households of white families, leaving behind their own children and becoming part of the fabric of their employers' families' units. Now, producer and director Diana Keam grew up in such a household, and she's embarking upon a mission to tell a story, making a documentary feature called Don't Be Late for My Funeral, focusing on her other mother, Margaret Matlala, as the protagonist. And she joins us to share more about her journey in the making of this film. It's great to have you and to speak to you. And ironically, as you were saying just before in the ad break, you were telling me about this story a week ago when we were working together in Pretoria, and now here we are. Tell me about what made you decide to tell the story, why it was so important.
Well, I've known her since, well, she knew my mother before my mother fell pregnant. So we have a lifetime together and a life story. The catalyst for me was at our first elections. And I remember thinking how these women had been such a cultural bridge and how important she was in my life. And I thought it was really important to honor the role that they played. So I wanted then, 20 whatever years ago, to tell a story about her.
Yeah.
And when my mother died last year, I decided to make it as a documentary rather than try and make it as a fiction film, because she is such a lively, interesting human being. So,
The title provokes a lot of emotion. Don't be late for my funeral. Why?
So she came to my mother's funeral last year and scattered my mother's ashes with all the children that she looked after. Well, not all of them, but a good chunk of them. She looked after 13 of us.
Oh, my goodness.
And at the funeral, she said to me, don't be late for my funeral. Yeah. So it's one of the questions I ask her in the film. Why did she say that?
Why do you think South Africans will resonate, especially right now, where we are faced with so many challenges, and especially, the racial issue becoming even more so such an issue now, where we're struggling through this? Why do you think South Africans will resonate with this documentary?
Well, I think it's a very common South African story, particularly amongst white people who had these nannies during the apartheid time. Now it's become more of a class issue, less of a race issue. And it's not a particularly comfortable story to tell because of the power dynamics and the discrepancies and the exploitation and a whole lot of the actual negative sides. But one of the things the question that I still have as an adult today is, how is it that the system that was trying to keep us apart brought this amazing woman into my home, who I love with all my heart, who was my other mother, you know, and she was the emotional stability when things were going pear-shaped. So we need to tell these stories, and I think we need to have those uncomfortable conversations.
We're going to talk about how people can get involved and help you crowdfund the fruition or the realization of this filmmaking. But what is the most important lesson, do you think, that you learned from Mama Margaret?
She gave me a sense of African culture, but the most important thing is that we are just all human beings, and the connection between us is so important. So this weird system that I grew up in, she just helped to show me that what a load of rubbish it all was.
Wow.
And she is, yeah.
So tell me about what you are doing for Mother's Day, because you're launching a crowdfunding campaign to raise capital to fund the film.
So it's on, the crowdfunding campaign is called Thunder Fund, spelled Thunda. And our call to action is, if you've had a woman who looked after you and your children, or possibly your mother was, or your grandmother was a domestic worker, let's honor these incredible women who were the backbone of our country. So by putting a bit of money into the film, we'll put a thank you to her in the credits, a little bit more money, add a photograph. So what I'm trying to do as a double thing is raise money, but also raise awareness and thank these women.
And it's such an international story, because we all know that at some point or another, there was somebody more than our own biological moms who played such an important motherly figure in our lives. And so I'll certainly be making my way onto Thunder Fund, right?
Excellent.
Thunder Fund. And I can't wait to see it. Thank you so much for joining us, Diana. We'll be following along on that journey. So head on over to, is it thunderfund.com?
.com, yes.
.com, and check out whether you can contribute to the making of this wonderful film called Don't Be Late for My Funeral.